Hello. Well, I hope you've gone and read that story, because I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. You can't really do science fiction without this man. This is David Bowie. Okay? Now, you've probably heard of David Bowie before. Mums and dads definitely will. But one dimension, one idea, one theme in science fiction has always been sort of exploring other worlds and going to space, okay, which I really like. I listen to a podcast called Astronomy Cast because I'm a sad loser. But I really love it. It's fantastic. I find it all about the universe and this, that and the other. Here's an artist that you really must get into. I know you boys and girls, you like your rave and your dance music and things that you just can't understand, or it's got no sound, it's just boom, boom, boom. But go back in time, okay? Do an H.G. Wells. Get in the magic time machine of music. Go to the attic. Get your mum and dad's record collection out and listen to this man, okay? He's utterly influential. Now, there is a link, again, between this song and There Will Come Soft Rains. Incredibly tenuous link. In fact, I might have to play another song after this. But just remember this one. If it's not, you just come... Oh, yeah. Weird, mysterious sounds. A space guitar. What would a space guitar be like? Made out of stars. Moon strings. Oh yeah, right. You remember that? They're getting it now. They remember. They're looking at each other thinking, oh no, we met to this song. We went to the disco and your dad asked me if he wanted to dance and I said yes. And then this came on and neither of us knew how to dance to it. So we just stood there feeling really awkward. And it was awful. But then we stayed together somehow. Isn't that beautiful? It's so romantic. Protein pills, it's in Star Trek. Science fiction is always about another technology. But what I really like about science fiction is the exploration of the unknown and people finding themselves isolated. Because technology does isolate us. One of the reasons I'm doing these videos is because we're all suddenly isolated. Like, no we're not. But science fiction deals with the fear of isolation. Oh, let's do this. We're going to space now. Woo! Oh yeah. Now the lyrics are great because they're all saying, yeah, well done. But then he is the one that's alone in a tin can, and it's that loneliness that science fiction often explores. And this is misunderstood. Now, There Will Come Soft Rains is certainly more than lonely. You know, this is a post-apocalyptic landscape with nobody in it, except for nature, which is really rather grand. On my screensaver, I've got a picture of just a guy in a spacesuit floating in space, which is really amazing. If you've not seen the film, it's that one where they get hit by a meteorite. It'll come to me. So that's my song for this lesson. Let me talk to you about post-apocalyptic fiction before we come to There Will Come Soft Rains, which is a post-apocalyptic masterpiece. There are lots of them. This is my favourite. It's a very heavy read, but I've read it probably 10 times. I read it every year around Christmas time because I hate Christmas. There's nothing I like more at Christmas than to bundle myself up in bed and read about the apocalypse. It just cheers me up. Because when you come to Christmas at my house, you see what the apocalypse is actually like. Okay, it's just horrendous. It's worse than a zombie apocalypse. One year, my nan, who was about 90, she was cooking the Christmas dinner, and she's 90, and then she had like a wobbly fit, and we had to cart her upstairs to lie down. I thought she was going to die, and that was the best Christmas we've ever had. Oh, good Lord. So, older ones, give it a read. As with Cormac McCarthy, you've always got to get through the first page. Although I thought the first page was stunning, it grabbed me. But go for it. Here's another one, The Death of Grass. Really interesting book. Do you know what it does? It explores what would happen to the world if grass died. A little bit like in the Great Depression in 1929 when you had the Dust Bowl linking to the last book. It's really quite amazing. We can't live without grass. Do you know that wheat is grass? So is corn. Grass is everywhere. Cows eat it. Without grass, we would all die. Apart from in this book, they don't, because they eat turnips. So I guess if you like turnips, you're going to survive the apocalypse. Rule number 1, like turnips. Here's another. Brave New World. Oops. I'd quite like some glasses like this. That'd be good. Like sort of space glasses. Brave New World. Now, this is a really good book because it's not particularly about a post-apocalyptic vision of the future, but it does look at the future in a very cynical way and kind of imagine we organise society very cynically. If you know anything about the Indian caste system, that'll help you understand that. That's quite a grown-up read. Year 7s, you might not be able to tackle that, but Year 10s, if you're watching, you can. Likewise with The Clockwork Orange, that's a very grown-up book, Year 10s, maybe even 11s and above. But a great book. That is society gone to absolute bunkum. And finally, Slaughterhouse 5. Grown-ups, mums and dads, give that a read. In fact, mums and dads, you can read these as well, to be honest with you, because you're sat in there telling your kids what to do, and then you're lounging around on the settee, probably playing PlayStation, Dad. Okay, which you really shouldn't play, to be honest with you. Get reading. Okay, so There Will Come Soft Rains. What a wonderful book. Let me hope that you read it. I'm just going to read you the poem because I love poetry for starters, which is probably not a very trendy thing to say, and talk to you a little bit about it. Because if you learn anything from this book, and I can set you some creative tasks to do. For stars, design your own robotic home. Imagine that. Imagine designing and writing about a home where pretty much everything was done for you. Now, this one, the home in this book, is a bit outdated. It's kind of like when I was your age and I'd read magazines and they'd say that in the year 2000 everyone would have rocket boots. I really wanted rocket boots. They're like, wow, rocket boots. Until I realised that if you had the rocket boots on and you press the button, your feet would just shoot off and you'd smack your head on the floor. You look a real idiot. Mind you, I think those people that stand on those things with wheels on, I think they look a bit daft as well. It's like, just get off and walk. You're ridiculous. And where was I? Back to the thing. So when Ray Bradbury was writing this in the probably early 60s, his vision of what modernity was like was very different to the reality. So it would be very interesting to look forward, if I were you, and to do a creative piece of writing, because I'm going to emphasise the importance of creativity, and just write about what do you think in 50 years' time. In 50 years' time, the world is going to be looking like. There is a really good exercise you can do if you want to do this. Number 1, imagine that you've got a time machine and you go forward in time, but it's a pretty rubbish time machine. You can only go forward in time 100 years or more. Okay, so let's make it 100 years. Also, when you're there, you can only come back after a year because it's not very well calibrated. What would you do? What would you take with you? Make a list for me. Pack your imaginary bag and make a list of what you would take into the future. And then, when you get there, think about what would they react like. Okay? I'm not going to give you any clues, but just first of all, pack your bag. So take the essentials. You can only take a plain bag. And then once you've done that, then, in your imagination, go forward into the future and say, okay, so I get there, I get all this stuff out of my bag. What do they think about it? What do they make of me? Okay, very interesting. Let me read you this poem. Okay, so the house has woken itself up because it's fully automated. And then in the middle of the poem, in the middle of the story, Ray Bradbury does this. He writes, okay, the voice said at last, since you express no preference, I shall select a poem at random. Quiet music rose to back the voice. Sarah Teasdale, as I recall, your favourite. There will come soft rains and the smell of the ground, and swallows circle with their shimmering sound. and frogs in the pools singing at night, and wild plum trees in tremulous white. Robins will wear their feathery fire, whistling their whims on a low fence wire. And not one will know of the war, not one will care at last when it is done. No one would mind whether bird nor tree, if mankind perished utterly, and spring herself, when she woke at dawn, would scarcely know that we were gone. It's a beautiful poem. Things that people say about poetry, number one, does it have to rhyme? No, but it can. Essentially, things that rhyme are verse. Verse simply brings a very loud gong sound at the end of every line that says, oh, this one sounds like the last one. Verse can be terrible, like really bad. I'll read you some William McGonagall later. That'll be a fun episode, that. The William McGonagall episode, to show you how bad verse can be. But the sound of poetry is important, and you can hear in that poem that Sarah Teasdale is using rhyme. She's using quite subtle assonance and consonants, okay, little bits of slightly more obvious alliteration. I can't hear in there many metaphors, to be honest with you, but I can hear quite a lot of symbolism of what these animals are doing, and it's really rather beautiful, because at times like this I think we come to terms with the fact that maybe we're not as special, and we are certainly very fragile. Therefore, life must be appreciated. Okay? And what I want you to do, if you actually do anything with this story at all, is do that piece of creative writing, download the poem, stick it in your book, just have a look at it, annotate it, see if you can see those little bits of language, and just that very, very, very subtle, slender contrast between the mention of the war and the beautiful, natural world that carries on after the war. If you want to do a pretty bleak piece of creative writing, why not? Because it's a beautiful day. Let's talk about the apocalypse. Write about what you think that vision of the world is like, the apocalyptic vision. Just a side of writing. Choose a character, maybe one, maybe two. Send them on a journey through a burned out city or a landscape, okay? And see where your mind takes you. It can be very bleak. Look around you. Ask yourself, what are you taking for granted? Mums, dads, all the comforts of modern life. We're facing that idea right now, People are fighting in supermarkets over toilet roll. I've never fought for toilet roll in my life. I can't imagine it. Will it come down to there'll be a TV programme where people, like gladiators, fight over a roll of Andrex, to the death, and then the winner gets to run off cross-legged with a roll of bog roll to like a toilet that's in perspex, and everyone can watch him wipe his bottom. Okay, right. So programme 3, I'm not sure what it's going to focus on yet. I'm going to make some notes and do some planning. Okay, have a lovely day. Go do some writing or something like that, or some reading. Bye.